my personal values, I would use an English word, but which has a specific meaning in French, which is humor. Have a good sense of humor. In French, humor, it is two words. The first word is a humility, and the second word is amour. So it means humility and love. That's my two most important values as a human being. If I go to my family's values, AFM values, 15 years ago we tried to work on our values, including all cousins, and we eventually found 4 values. The first value would be the so-called people first, but in our conception it means people first before the processes. We do not want to be too much process-oriented, because it's all a matter of people. The second value, we say creation first, because in our family we tend to promote entrepreneurship very, very strongly. Our third value is rather common with all families in business, is long-term. And the last one, the fourth value, we call it autonomy. That means that we try to give every single employee, every single family member, the best autonomy as possible. Autonomy between the businesses. There is no group on top of each single business. Autonomy as regards to the stock market. We try not to be listed because we want to be autonomous, facing the finance world if we can. And autonomy inside the hierarchy line. That means that we tend to promote what we call subsidiarity. Subsidiarity, most decisions must be taken near the final customer, at the bottom of the hierarchy. These are our 4 values. How did we manage to get to find these values? That was 15 years ago. I asked my cousins to think about it. It was a 1-year process. We had more or less 5, 6, 7 meetings. At that time, we were more or less 300 cousins, and 140 cousins were included in this process to find out what our values were. We first listed more than 20 values, which were all our values, but we decided to focus at the end. We voted and we decided that there were these 4 values. What is AFM? What am I talking about? AFM was founded by my grandfather in 1905, and a very important moment happened in 1955, 3 years after my grandparents' death. They both died in 1952. In 1955, my uncles decided to stay together against any law, any advice from consultants who usually tell families, please separate the businesses with the sons and daughters. And very strangely, in 1955, we decided to stay together on a joint venture position, and the sentence was, so as to do better together than each of us separately. So that was the origin of the AFM. And since then, every time there is a new creation inside the family assets, inside the family portfolio, every single member of the family becomes a shareholder of this new company. This is how I could define the AFM. So it means it's all the descendants of my grandparents. We are today 1,400 descendants of my grandparents. It's a very large family. And we are all shareholders of a common portfolio. And the second characteristic of this AFM is that we try, all of us, to get as much involved as possible in the business. How do we manage to get as many family members as involved in the businesses as possible? This is inside the so-called AFM, which means Association Familiale Meulier, so it's the Meulier Family Association. This is part of my job. I define my job saying, do everything possible to get family members as close as possible with the businesses. Get family members as close as possible with the businesses. There are more or less 4 ways to get close to the business. The first one is, as a family member, to become an employee inside one of the companies. We have more than 100 cousins working not as general managers, but just working inside the company, each one at his best level, whether just supervisor or business unit manager, and each one at his best level. That's the first way to be as an employee. The second way to be close to the businesses is to get involved in the governance. And we have more than 150 family members, somewhere members, somewhere directors, non-executive directors, inside one of the 200 boards. We have more or less 200 boards around the planet, and 150 family members are non-executive directors inside these boards. This is the second way. And the third way is to help next generations create their own businesses, because we are convinced that any one of us, for any one of us, it's very difficult to live under the shade of his or her father, of his or her mother. And so instead of transmitting the business to my sons or to my daughter, I will help my children create their own business aside from the historical business. And obviously, my sons and daughters will control the historical business, but through the boards, through the governance, and as members of the boards. But their own day-to-day business will be a new business. That's the third way we try to involve family members. And there is a fourth way to involve family members, is through training. We train them very often. We bring them to learning expeditions around the world, where we try to broaden their mind by visiting whether Poland, whether Russia, whether China, whether Brazil, and so on. And every year we organize more or less 2 or 3 learning expeditions around the world, where every family member pays the fees, and it's 40 family members learning expedition, because it's the size of a bus. We all do this inside a bus. When we visit a country, we take the bus and we try to talk to one another, and the next one sitting on the seat next to me, we talk on the microphone, so that we come to know each other. Because we say in our family that you only love whom you know. And in a family, even in a family in business, it's important to love one another. And for this, we must know each other. That's a very nice question, and I will answer both. I am against saying for the family the business must be performant, or for the business the family must be. I say both, and I use this sentence of Plato, the philosopher, Plato said, if you want the furrow to be straight, the two horses must walk at the same pace. If you want the furrow to be straight, the two horses must walk at the same pace. One of the horses is the family unity, it's the family involvement, and the other horse is the performance of the business. And I say, obviously, there is no family unity if there is no long-term performance, but there is no long-term performance if there is no family unity and family involvement. I will mostly quote the similarities because between the question I want to answer is what is the difference between families in business in Poland and in France. I think there is a similarity, that is our governments do not, or at least did not, recognize the importance of families in business. For very long, families in business have been purchased, have been very weak because our preceding governments would say families, they are rich, they are capitalists, and we must fight against families. And unfortunately, I know your story, and I know that more than 35,000 families in business were nationalized. But strangely, in France, many families in business were also nationalized after Second World War. So this is the similarity. There is probably a difference linked to the importance of these nationalizations. In Poland, it was generalized. All families were nationalized. So I imagine most families today are young families reinventing their businesses, when in France, some families survived to this nationalization. Like the Peugeot family, like my family, we managed to survive to the Second World War. There is one key point about family in business. It is to involve as much as possible family members inside the business. And for this, you must breed, you must educate your children in a rather, with a humility and in a rather, the English word would be modest way, not learning to throw money out of the window and to have a normal way of life. Because if you give your children whatever, a Porsche or a yacht or any, you will teach them not to work hard, and you will teach them not to like to take the bus to go to work, not to like to take the metro, the underground to go to work. And if you want your children to stand up, you must teach them to live just in a normal way. And this is our conviction. Otherwise, you promote your children as just people staying in the Bahamas with big cigars, and obviously very quickly the risk-taking culture will disappear inside the family, and you will probably see the business disappear, or the business being sold by your grandchildren to an American investment fund or to any investment fund. And that's the end of the family project. So please keep your children in a basic way of life. Our family, we have our own system of organization. For instance, we have 2 General Assemblies every year. Each General Assembly is a 2-day assembly on Friday and Saturday at the end of May, and Friday and Saturday at the beginning of December. What do we talk about in these meetings? What do we talk about during the learning expeditions and so on? we talk about business, obviously, but we are not writing the strategy of our companies. We are very strict on what we call subsidiarity, which is something which comes from the social doctrine of the church, which says that nobody can forbid anybody to use all the talents he or she has received from God. And we think at the very low level from the hierarchy, that's the level where people have the right decisions. They can make the decisions. That means at our level as shareholders, at the top level, we are not the best to decide what is the strategy. We decide about the family strategy. That is, whether we want to stay together, whether we want to keep on helping our historical businesses, whether we want to launch new businesses. This is our strategy. But each of our companies, Decathlon has its own strategy, Leroy Merlin has its own strategy, Auchan has its own strategy. And how do we write our family strategy? We do it through a vision process. We have a vision process every 7 years, and this vision process lasts more or less 12 months. It's a 12-month vision process where I ask all my cousins to enter this process. For instance, the last vision process we had was in 2016, and it ended at our General Assembly in May 2017. And the question was, why, what for, and for whom do we want to stay together within the next 20 years? Why, what for, and for whom do we want to stay together within the next 20 years? And among the 700 shareholders, 456 shareholders participated to this vision process. And this is very strong, because even those who are not very much involved in the business, they participate to this vision process, answering in their own way, well, why do I want, why, what for, and for whom do I want to stay together with my cousins within the next 20 years? So, as you can see, AFM, the Association Familiale Mullier, is just the gathering of 700 shareholders, because inside our family you become a shareholder when you are 20, after a 3 days training course, which allows you to become a shareholder. One of our key values, as I told you, is autonomy. We want every single member of the family to go his own way, to go her own way. That means if he or she wants to sell shares because he or she wants to launch his own business outside the family, he or she can do. If he wants to buy more shares because he has a good sense of economy, he can. So we are very keen on offering a maximum of liberty to our family members. And so this Association Familiale Mullier has no legal basis. It's just the gathering of 700 shareholders who are shareholders of a bunch of companies, but who are free to enter, to go out, to do whatever they want. If they want to work inside the businesses, they can. If they do not, they can. If they want to create a business inside the family, they can. If they want to create the business outside the family, they can. So I am against all these ideas of building a trust to protect the family members. And I say a trust is the best thing to put the family members into prison, into jail. And I do not want family members to feel as if they were in a prison. I want them to stay absolutely free to get in or to get out whenever they want. And to end this thing, I am sure that liberty is the best way to have fidelity. If you put people into a prison, they will try to escape from the prison as soon as they can. If you leave the bird's cage open, the bird will fly outside the cage, but he will always come back to the cage, obviously if there is some grain to eat. And the grain is is the passion for the family project, and the grain is the business performance. So what would I want to leave to next generations? I would first want to leave them like standing up adults. I would like them to go their way, and to reinvent the family project. And if they decide to split the family, okay, but let them think about it and let them look back at where they come from. I'm convinced, like Desmond Tutu, who was the Archbishop of South Africa a long time ago, he said, people without roots are people without future. So I would like them to look back at their roots so that they can build their own future. And obviously I would like to let them this passion about family in business, because I think we as a family, we have almost a prophetic role in the 21st century society, which is getting more and more finance, more and more short term, and we as families, we have a true mission for the next years, for the next century, and that's what I want to leave to the next generations.
Okay.